All right, you're here, and let's make it quick because I did work all night. I am tired. Why are things like slavery and rape good and just?
Okay, see, to understand the good and just part of that, it, because those two things are just a small fraction compared to everything else that is part of what is good and just in life. So, so it's like you have to understand good and just. The meaning of good and just is like, okay, life and death is good and just because it's necessary.
I
And
didn't.
that's
I
just
didn't ask
that's
why
just
life
a,
and death was good and just. I asked why slavery and rape were good and just, like you said in our comments conversation.
I know, yes, but you have to understand that those two things are just a small fraction compared to everything else
I I,
of
I
what is good
understand
and
that.
just.
I understand. I'm asking very specifically about these things. So again,
Okay.
you said that you're a Catholic. You believe in Jesus. You
Mhm.
believe in the Bible. The Bible, God, in His law, allows slavery, the act or practice of people owning people as property, typically as forced labor or for sexual reasons. He does not give any commands to protect them against mistreatment, and He allows them to be property forever. How is that compatible with a good and just God?
Uh, and that was referring back to the scripture that I was reading earlier, correct? On that other live. Uh,
I didn't catch your whole
with
conversation on that other live, but I do know that you guys talked a little bit about that. But I'm asking you
mhm.
specifically, how does slavery, this barbaric oppressive act, is how is it compatible with the good and just nature of this God?
Because it's uh, it's the human nature that is that brings upon the goodness and the justness. Because that it's that human nature that our self that we allow ourselves that we do this, and this is a part of part of the nature. Like we, this is through our own pride and through our own selfish greed that a person ends up deciding to think that they are better or are more worthy than another person. So therefore, this is them deciding that for themselves. They end up taking other people as slaves, and this is ultimately this ultimately comes down to the nature of who we are and what life is, because everything in life is good and just already.
I would
Because
disagree.
how I met,
Just because things are happening
yeah,
in
I
life does
know.
not mean that life is good and just. You need to back that up. You're making this claim that
No, I
life
was about to back it
that
up.
just
No.
because life, just because life and death are in existence, therefore they're good and just, and that isn't. I don't see how you're reaching that conclusion. You are also therefore saying everything in life is good and just when again that is contradictory to what the Bible states. The Bible says that our nature is sinful, that it is evil, that no one is good. So that means that everything we do, we it's not just, it's not good. So you as a Bible believer are going against your own beliefs when you say things like, well, it's life and it's nature, and so therefore what we do, it's good, it's just. You are disagreeing with your own Bible.
Not really,
So
because
when the Bible says that all men are that no one is good and that the nature of man is evil and not good, how is it that it is not contradictory when you say what we do and what we do in life is good and just?
because because everything in our life already is. because and everything in our life is for that for that purpose. This is like how I mentioned
For what
earlier.
purpose?
Everything in life has a predator, even plants,
Yeah,
and all the
and
way
that yeah,
down.
that had nothing to do with why God put slavery in His law.
No, it has everything to do because
Oh,
I'm getting to that.
okay, how is it
I'm
good that
getting
yeah? Can you explain why everything has a predator, therefore slavery is good and just in God's law?
yes. So okay, everything in life has a predator, and because everything in life has a predator, this is how the essence of good, or I mean, of life and death comes into play. Because we are
I
part
don't
of that
care. I don't
nature.
care about life and
Because
death. I'm
without
talking about slavery. Stop talking about life and death. We're
no
talking
no
about
no no
slavery.
no, no. You had to understand this because I'm
No, no,
through this
you're not
I will
talking.
make my point. I'm making my point. I'm trying through this. It's like you're attacking me from this for this point that I'm trying to make
I'm
because
not
it's
attacking you. I'm
not.
trying to stay. I'm trying to keep you on topic.
I know, but you have to understand. For this topic, I had to get to this to get to that
I
point
agree with you
of
that
the
life and
topic.
death exist. That doesn't do anything for slavery being just and good or not.
No, yeah, look, and I was getting to that. I was getting to that. Okay, and look, every, and but just bear with me, okay? And let me just get this point across. Because everything has a predator in life, we ourselves as humans, we look at ourselves as the apex predator. Because yeah, of course, if we put ourselves in front of a bear or in front of a lion or tiger, yeah, of course we're going to be eaten. But
So
but
we're
that's
not the apex
because
predator.
but we are because look at what human created all around us. No other creature on this planet created anything else like this except
Not
humans.
yet, but soon. Again, like we were talking
No,
about in our
not yet.
conversation, we already see other species starting out in their stone age. We see the intelligence growing in other species. It's just a matter of time till they catch up as well. So again, none of this has anything to do with showing whether slavery is justified or not.
It's because I'm not getting to my point
Okay,
here.
well, please get to
I'm
it.
trying. Well, okay. Let me get to it, please.
All right. Remember, I'm not trying to be
Um,
rude, but you're the one that kept pressing that we should talk about this now. I was the one that was trying to go to bed because I've been up all night.
I know, and
So,
I'm trying to get this through as
all
quick
right.
as
So let's
possible,
go.
but I'm trying to get to that point, to to that specific point. Okay, okay. So because yeah, we the fact of the matter is that we are the optimum predator compared to anything else. But who else is going to be a predator for humans? The only predator that a human can actually have is another human. And the only way a human can have that is through their emotions and through their own beliefs that, on how they choose to be. But see, how they choose to be is a nature of life, because if they weren't able to choose to be that way, or then they wouldn't be able to choose to be in a way that is good. So because of that, humans end up ultimately making the decision through, how I mentioned, through their abilities that we are all already possessing through the nature of this life. And because of that, this is why humans end up deciding to go choose or to take other people as slaves through their own greed and through their own selfish understanding and through their own pride. And these are just emotions that, like the seven deadly sins, or those things are mentioned because they're mentioned to help us understand of the nature that we all come from. So this is why ultimately, in the end, the fact that it is done, it is just. Because through the act of doing what is already the nature of this life, that is the only way anything in life can be good and just. No matter of what our misconception is to what we believe, or to what we believe what is good and bad. Because we ourselves become confused on that meaning. Because we are products of our environment, so we have learned what is good and bad. But chaos in God's nature is actually a part of a good and just natural order.
Are you going to land the plane anytime soon? You're really saying nothing.
Yeah.
You aren't answering the question.
This is why it's good and just.
Okay, so you're saying it's good and just because it's something we do, and we're living life, and so therefore it's good and just. That's a garbage answer.
No, it's because it's part of life. Because
again, being part of life does not make something good and just. Rape is a part of life. Cancer is a part of life. These things are parts of life. That doesn't make them good and just. Just because they exist in life and are part of people's existence does not make them good and just. You need to back that up. Do you know what these words mean? What is goodness? What is justice? Define them for me.
Good and just? Well, what they truly are in this sense, it's a lot simpler than what.
Please, just define it.
What you're trying to mention.
What is goodness? What is justice? Just give me the definitions.
Goodness is something that is great, good, something that is good is something that is how do I say it? That is justifiable, or that is explainable.
So good. Good is something that is in the positive towards something that is like clear, or has an objective explanation, or something that captures essential meaning. Goodness itself has to do with positivity, well-being, health, things like that. Justice is fairness.
Well, it's not health. It's just positivity and
justice is fairness. Justice is fairness. So when we're looking at things like slavery is not fairness, and it doesn't have anything to do for the person's well-being or their health or anything to put their position into the positive. So what we see is slavery is neither just nor is it good. And we have a God character in this Bible that is claiming that his nature is good and just, and yet we see him giving commands that are going against being good and being just. This is a contradiction. You're trying to somehow, and my whole question was, why did God allow slavery in his law? And you're trying to give me some bullshit of like, hey, that's just life, man. I don't give a shit if that's life. I understand why people did horrible things like slavery in the past. I'm asking you, why did God, this perfect, good, and just being, do something that is so clearly contradictory to goodness and justice?
Because just how he allowed, it's like it's you have to understand. Like, please, I need you to understand this. Is life and death good and just?
I don't care about life and justice. We're talking about slavery. Slavery has nothing to
But
do
we're talking about how
life
that is
and
good
death.
and just.
We're
Right?
talking about slavery.
It's
Yes,
the essence of it.
so
Yes.
you told me in our conversation that you do not think slavery is good and moral, but then you said it is good and moral because that's just life. That's things we do. So you are contradicting yourself. Your view doesn't make any sense. It's flawed. I'm asking you to explain how slavery is good and just, and you're talking about life and death. I don't give a shit about life and death in this context. We're talking about the act of slavery. People owning people as property, typically as a forced labor or as sexual purposes. How is that good and just?
Because that. What would your understanding of good be in life be without bad? About things that are bad.
I don't need to be a
It's like,
slave. I don't need to be
do
a
you
slave to
understand? Do
know
you
that that's
understand?
bad. Do you need to be
No,
a
but you
I'm
understand.
sorry, do you need to be a slave to understand that you wouldn't like being a slave? Do you need to
No,
be
of course.
do you need to be
Okay.
sex trafficked to know that you wouldn't want to be sex trafficked? So again, can you actually answer the question that I've been asking you since I messaged you after that live? Why did God put this in his law when he is supposed to be good and just and he is allowing this barbaric system of slavery?
It's because you're misunderstanding of what good is, what he means of what good and just is. It's like you think it's
No,
barbaric.
I know what God
Just like
thinks.
you,
I
just
know
like
what
you
God
think
thinks good
it's
and just is.
chaotic. You think it's chaotic because of your understanding of what you believe to be bad. But the chaoticness or the chaos that there is the perfectness already, and through that it's already good. It's because it's good and just. It's
What
just the
perfectness
simple.
already? There is no perfectness already.
Yes, there is.
No, not at all.
There's a lot. The perfectness is all around you.
I'm sorry. How is it perfect when the sun gives you cancer? When babies are born with deformities? When people have literally when their blood poisons them, or when they can't breathe because the pollen outside? How is any of this perfection?
Because that same sun also gives you life.
That's not
Without that
perfection.
sun,
That's not perfection. It would be perfection if it gave you life and it also didn't give you cancer. But we have
no,
life
it'd be
and we have
but you have to
cancer. That's
understand
not perfection.
The perfectness in this life is life and death. So therefore, it has to give either or, no matter for something for it to be perfect.
That still doesn't justify slavery or why God put it in his law.
Because that was he didn't put it in his law.
Leviticus
I
25
just-
Leviticus
I had-
25 44 through 46 is God himself speaking, giving laws to his people, telling them who they can and cannot have as slaves. Don't tell me that God didn't put that in his law, because it absolutely is in there and I know exactly where it is, and it is
Yeah,
God
he said the
himself
bondmen
speaking.
and the bondmaids.
Yeah, sir. Do you
He
know
said you shall have
what is a slave?
rule over.
What
you
is a
shall
slave?
have rule over these heathens. He was mentioning. He was speaking to. He was explaining that a person, basically a person who is of God, an Israelite, has a responsibility of those people, of the
They're
land,
slaves.
the bondmaids, the
their
bondmaids
slaves.
and the bondmen, and you shall have their possessions of them. But
Yes, and what is a slave?
a slave, it's
What is a slave?
someone who is forcibly.
Someone who is owned as property, correct? Typically for
Yeah,
uses of
but
forced labor or sexual reasons, correct?
yeah, but they
So,
didn't use it for that.
oh yes,
Or
they did, and
they
I
can
will show.
explain.
Here, and I will show you. So here, this is, and let me read this to you. Leviticus 25. If we start in verse 39, it says, "For any of you who are dependent become so impoverished that they sell themselves to you, you shall not make them serve as a slave. They shall remain with you as a hired or bound labor." So this is where we get the bond servants from. This is truly what a bond servant is, an indentured servant. They shall serve with you until the year of Jubilee. Then they shall go out with them, with their children, from your authority, and they shall go back to their own family and return to their ancestral property. For they are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. So we know that that God's talking about Hebrews here, because He brought Hebrews out of the land of Egypt. These are the people He's saying
Yeah,
are servants, not slaves. He
So,
says, "You shall
for
not."
they,
Hold on,
for they
hold
are
on.
my servants.
Yes.
So
Yes, so God is
they are
claiming
servers of God.
so God is claiming the Hebrews as his slaves already. No one else can make them slaves. That is why Hebrews are to be servants, not slaves. He says, "You shall not make them serve as slaves. They shall be servants, and they shall go free after a certain amount of time. But as for the male and female slaves whom you may have, it is around the nations around you that you may acquire them. You may acquire them from the aliens that reside among you, and that have been born among your land, and they may be your property. You may keep them as a possession for your children after you, for them to inherit as property. These you may treat as slaves. But as for your fellow Israelites, no one shall rule over one another with harshness." So we see that there's a difference. When it comes to Hebrews, God very specifically says, do not make them serve as forced labor, as slaves. They are servants. But non-Hebrews, those you can have as property, and you can own them forever. And you and I agreed that slaves are property. They are seen as property, and they are owned that way. And they are owned that
Well,
way.
what version is
And
that?
then, this is the NRSV. And I know that your King James says bondservant, but again, the context shows, because the original Hebrew word is aved, which means slave or servant. It's talking about someone in a service role. We have to look at the context. When the context is clearly showing you a difference, that, hey, some aveds are servants, and they are to be hired workers. They're to be paid. They're to be released after a certain period of time. You cannot mistreat them. And then there are these other aveds that you can own as property that do not have protections against mistreatment, and you can have them forever and their children after them. We can see that there's clearly a difference between these two types of aveds. One is a servant. One
Yeah.
is actually a slave. And to answer your
But
question of,
he
oh,
says-
but they didn't take it that way, Deuteronomy 20 and 21, God is giving rules for battle. And starting in verse 10 and 20, God says that if you draw near to a town to fight against it, offer terms of peace. And if it accepts your terms of peace and surrenders, then all the people shall serve you as forced labor. But if they do not accept your terms of peace and make war against you, seize it, and when the Lord your God gives it into your hand, you shall put all the males to the sword. But you may, however, take as your plunder the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the town, all its spoils, that you may enjoy the spoils of your enemy which the Lord God has given to you. So we see that they can go to neighboring towns and say, hey, be our forced labor. And if they say no, they kill the men, and they take all the women and the children and everything else anyway. And then what can they do if they see among the captives a female that they're lusting after? Well, Deuteronomy 21 tells us, starting in verse 10, that when you go out to war against your captives, or against your enemies, and the Lord your God hands them over, suppose you see among the captives a beautiful woman whom you desire to want to marry. So you bring her home to your house. She shall shave her head, pare her nails, and discard her captive's garb, and remain in your house a full month, mourning for her father and mother. After that you may go into her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. But if you are not satisfied with her, you shall let her go free, certainly not sell her for money. You may not treat her as a slave, since you have dishonored her. So we see that they can indeed take non-Hebrews as sex objects, as forced labor. And we know in that time period, women's value in that culture had to do with their sexuality and their virginity. And it says here that he can't even sell her as a slave because he dishonored her. And whenever he feels like it, he can take her. Whenever he feels like it, he can kick her out because she's not doing it for him anymore. There is nothing in here that says he has to provide for her, take her to the next town, try to set her up with a new life, try to find her next of kin. None of that. So we see that, yes, they can buy slaves, they can forcibly take slaves as forced labor, or they can just take women for sexual purposes and then kick them out when they're done with them. This is slavery.
But like whenever you mention that they get kicked out, whenever that happens, whenever they let them go as free, correct?
But remember, in this culture, this woman has nothing. She doesn't have her family because you killed them. She doesn't have her homeland because you kidnapped her from it. She's a stranger in a strange land, and you have taken away the one thing that makes her valuable in this culture, her virginity. And therefore, you have given her a death sentence. She has nothing to do. She doesn't even have anything to bargain to put her back into slavery because you have taken that from her. You have given her a death sentence in this culture by kicking her out like this. So again, and even if that wasn't the case, that still doesn't exclude the point that God is allowing his army to take female captives of war when they lust after them and when they want them, and kick them out when they want. This is God allowing slavery by purchase, by forced kidnapping for forced labor, and for sexual purposes. So you agreed with me that that's what a slave is. You have to agree with me that God is allowing this in his law. Otherwise, you are contradicting yourself.
Okay, so obviously, the Old Testament, because obviously that's the Old Testament, yes. And the nature of God, you have to understand that whenever they're speaking in the Old Testament, they're showing you the full nature of what God is. Because of what everything in this life, basically.
Sure, the full nature of God is he's a genocidal, crazy maniac that likes slavery, that likes to give people the consequences of being raped, even though they didn't do anything wrong, that takes the lives of children just because he can. None of this shows goodness. None of this shows justice. So again, how is it good and just? The children's life. How is it good and just that God put slavery in his law? You still haven't answered.
It's good and just because that right there, what you were mentioning right there, it's not. You're looking at it too. How do I say it? You're looking at it too narrow-minded on this.
I'm asking you again, please explain how it is just and good to allow slavery in your perfect moral law.
And because in that text, he was explaining to them on how they should handle the people, and because he also even said, "For these people are my servants." So he was speaking that these are servants.
That's talking about the Hebrews, not the non-Hebrews. The non-Hebrews are the ones that can be slaves. Why did God allow slavery in his law? Come on, man. You said it would be quick. I'm waiting.
Yeah, because he allowed it because he wanted to explain.
He wanted to explain what? Because nothing's ever explained. Nothing's ever fixed. The New Testament still endorses slavery as well. Jesus, as well as his followers. None of this changes. None of this is ever explained.
In the New Testament, it's never endorsed.
Absolutely it is.
I know that for...
Peter tells slaves to obey even their cruel masters because God is more pleased when you suffer unjustly. Literally, even the Bible calls things unjust. So, Just because things happen in life, that clearly even the Bible disagrees with you. It's not just because it's happening in life. So the New
Yeah, well,
Testament, so
Jesus
the New
also
Testament tells
mentioned.
slaves to submit to their earthly masters, to obey them even if they're cruel, and Jesus, with his own mouth, endorses the Mosaic law, which holds the slavery laws. So yes, Jesus and his followers, all of them, are perfectly fine with slavery. None of them speak against it. I have a question. Have you even read the Bible? You seem to
Yes,
not
I
know it at
have.
all. Are you sure? Because how do you not know this stuff? You said
I
that
know this stuff.
really because you said that God never allowed slavery, and now we're going through it, and you're like, okay, well, now
Uh,
let me just tell you how it's good, and then you fail to do that. You said that slavery is never endorsed in the New Testament, and I told you exactly where it is and how it is, and you didn't seem to know that.
no,
Are
no,
you
it's
sure that you?
because he's mentioned what they're saying to, okay, just how Jesus says, when you, will you be willing to show your other cheek? Show the other cheek. So therefore, if if you get hit on one cheek, would you be willing to show the other cheek?
This has
Because
nothing to do with
this
justifying
is be,
slavery. Justify slavery.
no, it has everything to do with what it was mentioning. Because this is what they were mentioning. Like, even if your master is cruel, then it's like, oh, even if like it's saying like, even if God is cruel, then you should still obey him.
That's not
because
justice.
because
I'm asking you to show the justice in it. You're just showing might makes right. Your authority, you just have to follow it. That's not justice. That's just blind, dumb obedience.
the
Show me the
justice,
justice.
it, okay, the justice is in the finite order. Whenever everything is, whenever you simplify everything, it's in the finite order. The good and the just is in the essence of what everything is.
That doesn't make any
Because
sense. Do you? Okay.
because
If I were
because
to
without,
say,
if you didn't have that ability to go and choose to do these things to other humans, then how would they have the ability to go and help or be of a benefit to humans?
yeah, that doesn't answer my
It's
question. Why did God put slavery in His law? How is it just? How is it
I
compatible with the good and just God? I'm waiting for the answers to my questions.
He put it in there because he was trying to explain to them
Explain what?
of who I because I read the King James version. Don't read no other
I've read the
version
King.
because
I grew up reading the King James version. I've read it for like 20 years. Don't tell me to go
yes,
read the
and
King James version.
the King James version has different words
Yes, I know,
than the
and
version
that's
that
one of the
you're.
reasons why I don't read it anymore. Because the King James version is beautiful if you look at it in a poetic sense, but if you look at it for being as accurate to the Hebrew and the Greek translations as possible, it fails. It is missing verses. It has things changed. It has things added. It is a wreck when it comes to academic, accurate, textual copying. The King James
Okay,
is
so
a
what?
shit translation. Get a better one.
Okay, okay, so what you were reading, was that before or after the King James, the version that you were reading from?
The version that I was reading from is the
Yes.
NRSVUE. That is one of the top scholarly recommended versions. That is the closest to the Hebrew and the Greek that we have.
Okay.
Now, and again, nothing in the verses that we read, even if we went to the King James, they say the exact same things. So just because they
Well,
use
they
different
mention
words,
heathens.
yeah, just because they say different words does not mean that they're saying different things. You know what a heathen is?
Well, from my understanding earlier, whenever I was talking to the other people, they were saying that a heathen is it's what were they saying? It's un, unreformed, something like that. I'm not sure.
Oh my
The
God, a
heathen is
heathen.
what?
So
Someone
the heathen is the
unbeliever.
non-Hebrew. The heathen is the non-Hebrew. In the Bible, when it talks
Hmm.
about heathens, it's talking about how there's the people of Israel. Everyone else is a heathen. Which is
Yes.
why in Leviticus
So they were
25, when it's
explaining.
saying who can be a slave and it's saying the heathens, it's saying non Hebrews. Literally exactly what I said from this version that I read.
o- Okay, so because of that, they are explaining that they have possession over these people, or they because they
Because they're
have
their
a
slaves.
responsibility. They have a responsibility of those non-believers
Because they took them as slaves.
because of the because they themselves are believers.
No,
So
because they're
so you
slaves. If they converted to be believers, they would be Hebrews, and then they wouldn't be slaves. But
but
they're
in that sense
slaves. They're owned
they
as
are only
property
slaves.
forever because they are not
The
Hebrews, which means that they are
so
slaves.
so in that sense, then they are slaves to to their to their non-belief,
No, they are a slave to
right?
Hebrew people. They are
No,
physical slaves. I don't give a shit about this spiritual slavery shit. We are talking about literal people being legally recognized as property. They are being forced to do labor. They are being used for sex, and we can see that in the text. So, no, don't give any, oh, they're slaves to their unbelief. No, that's bullshit, and that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about
well, if they're
this
heathens,
person has been dehumanized to the point where they are property, an object that is being owned and used for their labor force or for sex. Explain
but
how
that
that is
doesn't.
good and just.
But he doesn't. Does he mention that they were used in this such manner?
Yes, did you not pay
Not the
attention to the
manner.
word to
Not
the
the
verses
man.
I
No, not
read?
the manner with the woman, because the woman, of course, he was explaining that you if you take a wife who is of non Hebrew, then from them, then yes, you can take them, but then okay, you have to wait a certain amount of time, yes, and then
You've
after
taken
that,
someone without their consent, you've kidnapped them from their homeland, and you have forced them to do sexual things with you, and then you kick them out when you're no longer satisfied. That is abuse. That is oppressive. That is not good. That is not just. That is slavery. Just because he can't sell her because she no longer has a value after he rapes her does not mean that what he did to her in that time was good or just. So, yes, we see passages where God allows his army to go and kidnap people and use them as forced labor, or kidnap women and use them for sexual purposes. That is slavery.
yeah, but I feel like you're misunderstanding
I feel like you're
the whole
misunderstanding. It's a
point of this
very easy thing
text.
to understand, and you have just completely gone through these mental gymnastics. You have yet to explain how slavery is good and just, how it could be compatible with such a nature with this so claimed God that claims to be good and just, even though he says don't oppress and yet says go ahead and have slaves, which is oppressive. You have yet to answer any of
Well,
my questions. You are just going on and on about life and death and things that have nothing to do with the actual question that I'm asking you.
well, good and just. Okay, yeah, life and death is good and just, and then
No, it is
just like
not. Life
everything,
and death
they
are just facts
how
of reality. But again, that does not make them good and just because they exist in reality and in life. So,
so what
so
what are they then?
so
What
you
does it
have
make?
to. Life and death are just what is. They are not good. They are not just. It's neither or. But when we're looking at specific actions that people do, like slavery, we can judge things like that as being good and just. So again, we said that justice is, things being served in the positive. That isn't being done with slavery. You are dehumanizing someone. You are literally making them worse. You are taking away their dignity, and you have made them property to be owned. And then, as far as justice being fairness, You're not treating someone fair when you have literally made them below you. It is not fair or
Yes.
just to engage in slavery. So if this God is good and just, he cannot engage in slavery, yet he made a law allowing it. Explain how that is good and just for the last time.
Because how I was trying to explain earlier, that's not what he was explaining.
He wasn't explaining anything. Actually, yes. No. This is what God was explaining. God was explaining that the Hebrews are his servants. The non-Hebrews, they can be slaves. That's what he was explaining. He was explaining the difference of who
No,
could be a slave
he
and
was
who could
he was
not be a
explaining
slave.
that they have possession over them.
Yes, that they have possession over
Yeah,
their slaves. Over their
No,
slaves.
no, it doesn't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It doesn't say
Let's.
slaves in King
Yes,
James.
I don't give a shit. You know what bondsman is? Do you know what bondsman means in the King
But-
James?
Bondsman and bondsmaid.
Do you know
male
what it
and female?
means? Do you know what? Do
What
you know
does
what
it
a
mean?
bondsman and bondsmaid?
A man that is bonded.
So, what is the original Hebrew word for that?
I'm not sure.
It's aved. Do you know what aved means?
No.
Slave or servant. It is someone in a service role. So you have to look at the context, which is why I read verses 39 to 46 for you, where God himself is specifying in the context who can be a slave and who cannot be a slave. The Hebrews cannot be slaves. Non-Hebrews can be slaves. They are your property. They are your possessions. That is what God is explaining here. So
Because the Hebrews are already servants of God.
yes, so remember,
therefore they are-
yes, and the difference in their
they
treatment
serve-
and the difference in their treatment is the Hebrews are seen as hired workers. They are released after a certain amount of time, and they have protections against mistreatment. None of that is given to the Hebrews or to the non-Hebrew slaves. That is the context, and that's how we know that there is both servitude and chattel slavery here. It is being extremely specific and clear. So even if you want to use the King James, I don't care what word you put in there. You can, instead of bondsman and bondsmaid, you could say floof ploof. You know, your male and female floof ploofs are to come from the heathens around you. It is of these floof ploofs that you may own as your property. What are we, if we know that floof ploofs means humans, and we are saying humans are being owned by other humans as property, we know that that is slavery. It doesn't matter what word you use for it. The context is still the same.
But in that context, you have to understand that how it's trying to help you understand, because the book, you can't look at the book literal. If you look at the book literal,
Some
then,
parts
then
are
you're
literal
just
and
gonna
some parts
have
aren't.
yeah, but if you look at it all literal, you're just gonna have a problem with everything.
I don't look
So
at it all
therefore,
literal.
the
I
book-
look at the parts that are literal,
So-
literal, and the parts that are metaphorical, metaphorical. This part is
How
supposed
do
to
you
be
know?
taken literal.
How do you know between the both? How do you know that?
Yeah, it's actually really easy. The number one way is the writing style. So, like, for example, and the easiest example that we can point to, the Psalms. The Psalms is poetry. We know that Psalms are to be taken metaphorically. When we look at things like Revelation and its prophecy and vision, we know that that's a metaphor. We know that it has symbolism in it, and that there are things that we need to think a little deeper on. When we're looking at things like the Torah, and we're looking at things like the Chronicles, those are supposed to be historical records. Those are supposed to be taken literal. So it is actually very easy, if you have any understanding of reading comprehension and how to actually read, to be able to tell from in the Bible what is literal and what is metaphorical. So no, I don't take all the Bible literal. I take what's supposed to be literal, literal, and what's supposed to be metaphorical, metaphorical. So don't try to say I take the whole Bible literal. I don't. But this part is supposed to be literal
But you
because it
are.
is historical record keeping. And that is how, and this is one of the many ways that we can actually show the Bible is incorrect when it comes to its historical and scientific and biological claims. Because it does make real world claims about history, about science, about biology, and we can fact check it and we can realize that it is wrong. So, again, slavery, why did God put that in his law?
Oh, like I said, he put it in there because he was trying to explain to the Israelites who they had possession over in that land.
Yep, the people they took on as
So
slaves.
therefore, it was
So thank you for, I guess,
therefore it was the
answering.
heathens.
Yeah,
It was the heathen.
yeah, the non-Hebrews. Those were the ones that they could
Yeah,
take
the
as slaves.
non-believers.
Yeah, those were the ones that they could take as slaves and then own as property. So thank you for showing us that the God of the Bible does, in fact, endorse slavery. And I guess thank you for wasting our time and not being able to justify it. Is there anything else you want to say before I finally go to bed? Because honestly, you wasted my time. You answered nothing.
No, you just
No,
listened.
no, dude.
Nothing.
I listened to you.
No, no,
I
no,
tried
no.
to hear. I
No,
tried
no,
to hear your
you-
side, but all you said was bullshit.
That-
You never answered. You never justified how
There's a
God could be good and
difference. There's a
just
difference.
and still endorse slavery.
There's a
So
difference between listening and having your mind made up.
yeah, that's
You know?
yeah, okay. And do you think you said something important there? I could say the same thing back to you. So what? That doesn't change what the Bible itself says. And the Bible itself shows that God allowed slavery, that God himself claims to be justice and goodness, and yet still allows for this oppressive, barbaric system of slavery in his law. You still failed to justify how that is compatible with a justice and good nature. No matter how much you try to give some weird bullshit explanation of that's just life, man, and whatever we do in life is good and just because, we're living it. That just goes against the Bible. So your views go against the religion you claim to stand for. You need to go and sit with yourself and actually figure out what you believe and why, because when you try to explain it, it's just garbage that comes out.
Well, I didn't really have a person that was able to give me a chance to understand my point. So
Hey, I listened to you. I told you that that the answer you were giving was bullshit and had nothing to do with what I was asking. And you said, please, let me explain. I shut up. I let you explain. I listened to you go on. And you know what? Your answer had nothing to do with what I asked. So, I'm sorry if I called it, and you're upset that I called it. But, whatever, man. Is there anything else that you have
no,
to say?
I'm just.
All right.
No, I'm just.
All right.
I'm just
If
upset
you
that-
ever can actually figure out a justification for how slavery is good and just, go ahead and let me know. But other than that, I don't know, man. And as far as the Bible is concerned, I highly encourage you to study it because you clearly don't know much about it at all.
Don't let your cup be overfilled. All right. All right. Take care, bro.
Yeah. All right. Bye. All right. Well, that was a waste. This guy was on a live talking about slavery being good and just, and so I asked him. I was like, "Why did God put that in His law? How was that compatible with the good and just nature?" And it was just all this bullshit of, "Well, you see, it's the balance of life and death, and everything that we do is good and just." And it's like, I'm sorry. I thought you said you were a Christian. I thought you said you believe in the Bible. The Bible says that we are all sinners, not one is good, that our nature is evil and sinful. David said that he was sinful from the womb. So all of this is just crazy. Everything he was saying just went against his religion. I don't believe he's read the full Bible, especially if he didn't he doesn't know what Jesus said. He doesn't know what Jesus' followers said. All this is just silly. And he begged me too. He begged me to go and talk to him on live so that we can talk about this. I wanted to go to bed a while ago, but oh my god. And he said, "Oh, it'll be quick. I can just explain it real quick." All right, fine. I listened, and you know what? Nonsense. It was just nothing but nonsense. All right. I think I got a couple of restrictions.